Well, we're going to go ahead and begin and get started. My name is Michael Watson. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's webinar, Internship and Job Search 101. I'm the Employee Experience Advisor for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. I'm also the Vice President of 1stGenYale, and we are very excited about providing this webinar for you and in partnership with the Office of Career Strategy. And the colleagues who will participate in this tonight, Derek Webster and Joramel Zalavar from the Office of Career Strategy, and June Chen is the co-moderator. And what we're going to do is, the reason that we're doing this webinar is very simple. All of you have heard about the economic conditions and that people are concerned about a possible recession. That will make it much more competitive for jobs after graduation, and there may be a natural reduction of internships, and getting a good internship may become more competitive. The Office of Career Strategy is a resource that you can utilize, and that's why we invited them to join us tonight to discuss the resources they have and the strategies that you can use to be more successful at obtaining an internship or a full-time job, whether you are an undergraduate or a graduate student. And with that, I turn it over to Derek.
Sure. Thank you, Michael, and thank you for having us. So yeah, always happy to engage with 1stGenYale. Give you a little bit of background on me. I'm the Senior Associate Director for Creative Careers. So I'm the person in the Office of Career Strategy that tends to most obviously work with those who are interested in entertainment, arts, museum, media, any of those sorts of things. But also all of our office are generalists. I'm part of a team called Common Good and Creative Careers. So Joramel, who will introduce himself in a second, is the other half of that. But actually, there's a ton of overlap between the materials that we tend to cover, and also some of the resources, and particularly special resources that are available for students who actually are coming from a first-gen low-income background. So we'll discuss that a little bit more. The format for tonight, we're going to give you just kind of like a top-level look down through the cloud sort of version of the resources that are available in our office, but then we'll leave plenty of room for open Q&A so we can get into more specific details or territories that you might be concerned about that we can unpack a little bit further. But yeah, Joramel, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Joramel Zalavar. I'm also the Senior Associate Director for Common Good Careers. Derek is a beloved team member of the CGCC team.
Beloved, I got it.
Yes, I work alongside with him every day. My specialties particularly are within education and government. But as Derek mentioned, we're all generalists. So we cover the whole spectrum of career interests that are out there. But within the CGCC in particular, it can also extend into public service, policy and think tanks, nonprofits. So it runs the gamut. And welcome again to our presentation this evening.
And we're excited to have June moderating for us as well. June, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is June Chen. I'm class of 2020 from the School of Management. Currently, I work as a consultant for a healthcare management consulting company specialized in private equity. So really happy to be here tonight. I personally have been through lots of ups and downs with job search. So looking forward to your questions later.
Fantastic. And I should have mentioned, I kind of sort of skipped past, I'm also a Yale alum, class of 99, Pearson College, film studies major with a focus in lit. So that meant a lot of interesting engagements in Hollywood after I graduated from Yale. And I'm back. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into, and they didn't call it such things back then, but I would have qualified as FGLI when I was an undergrad. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at, I think the first slide of the presentation sort of speaks for itself. We are us, but what we're going to do for today, if everybody's, everyone can see that, right? I just want to make sure. All right, we're good. So we're going to poke into this sort of again from the top coming down into what is the Office of Career Strategy, and then through that lens, how does that fit into planning for summer engagements? And as Michael mentioned, there's particular interests and particular obstacles that we could be considering as those things change and evolve seasonally. But a couple different things to know about us. I would actually skip down to the bottom of this slide because the biggest ways that you can get a hold of us, we have a very robust website with a lot of resources in and of itself. It holds a ton of resource for you, as well as giving you instruction and the ability to set up an advising appointment with Jormel, myself, or anyone else in our office. That site, ocs.yale.edu, will also kick you over to Simplicity, which we actually call it the Yale Career Link, or YCL. When you're working with our office, you'll probably hear about that a lot. That's where the jobs board lives. That's where the employer directory lives. That's where a lot of like Yale specific resources live. So definitely worth keeping that in mind. But also, yeah, up top, we do have an Instagram account, a Facebook account, and a YouTube account if you want to follow along with us in promotions and those sorts of things. So what are we going to cover today? Well, it'll probably range a little bit farther than this, particularly as we get into the Q&A. But top view, like we want to make sure that you understand what services we offer. We're going to talk through like the process of setting goals and expectations and understanding what that means and how to do that responsibly. We're going to talk about the kinds of programs specific to our office that are run, but also external resources that you should be aware of and other things that you should understand, like our website and other things that can point you in different directions. Funding is always a big part of the equation, whether that's finding the kind of job that does pay or finding some kind of resource that will help pay for jobs that are unpaid. That can be useful, particularly on the internship side of things. Our office, one of the fundamentals we do on a more servicey side and not just kind of conversational and strategic side is material reviews. So understanding approaches to materials. We probably won't dig too deep into that today because that's such a big conversation we could sort of pick up in and of itself, but we can definitely kind of fly over that as well. And then, we'll be ending with an action plan or just a way of making sure that you're looking at the appropriate steps in order to understand how to move these things forward. Okay, so what do we offer? So in some ways, I think it can be broken down in a couple of different categories, but I do think two of them are advising and then exploring, right? So on one level, like the advising tends to be the things that we're doing. Imagine this were a one-on-one session and I'm just talking to you and we're digging in and we're helping you to better understand yourself, your interests, who you are, where you're coming from, what context you bring with you. We do a ton of advising in that one-on-one, but also we do it with workshops like these. We do it with materials reviews and other things. And we actually do have a particular resource for quick questions. So, sometimes when you set up a one-on-one appointment, it's actually more about, I have sessions up to 45 minutes. Many of them are up to 30 minutes. And so that's actually a pretty robust one-on-one conversation where we can dig pretty deep. Sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes you don't even want that. And so we have a version where you can just kind of punch into an online version and work with someone for like a 15-minute just to look at a resume sort of thing as well. So advising is a big part of what we do. But I always think it's important to talk through the fact that like some people think that the materials and the advising, direct advising is sort of the piece, right? Like how we engage with you. But actually, like we're about a much broader exploration. And so, yeah, we have the website and other resources that are available there, but we also just have a lot of different opportunities to be talking through with you how you can go out even from our office and feel better prepared to do your own explorations and then bring that material back to us, bring questions back to us. So there's a little bit of a loop that goes on with when someone's using our office the appropriate way, where they're engaging, they're kind of doing the first level thing, they're learning more information, getting more context, and then coming back to us. It's an ongoing conversation. So just keep that in mind. So strategically, what does a process normally look like, right? So early on, there's going to be some of those exploration questions and the goal setting, as we talked about, like that's a piece of what we're helping you to do, which is really just helping you to find out what are you looking for. And sometimes you might come in with a much better defined version of that. You might know specifically, here's what I'd like to do, and we can try and help you get there. And then other times, and actually quite more often, you'll have maybe a vague thought or, my major, I like to do something. These are the classes that really like speak to me. Well, what does that mean? Those are the kinds of conversations that we can have. And so we get into a step 2, which is really deeper preparation, deeper research, helping you, to help you to get to where you need to go once you start identifying, the modules along the way. And that can involve things like helping you with your materials, LinkedIn, your resume, any of those sorts of things. But importantly, also helping you to connect more broadly with people outside of the circles that you're currently in. once we're getting you connected, we're helping you with your materials, we're helping you with a broad exploration of definition, you're usually going to be landing on something where it's like, okay, I'm applying for things now. And what does that mean in terms of finding the things? And what does that mean in terms of like following through on those things? Now, I know a question I commonly get, I think, JoMel probably gets this quite often as well, is should I be just sending things through jobs boards, or I've heard that there's other things I'm supposed to be doing along the way? I'll give you the short answer and we can come around and give a bigger answer. It's both and, right? Like they're both really good things. Like you need the context to be doing what we're almost, we're almost saying it diminishingly to call it passive search. The truth of it is it's traditional search. Like you find the right jobs board with the right support that you like, the kind of product they're putting out there, the kind of internships or the kind of positions that are being listed. It's perfectly justified for you to be spending some time sending out applications in those directions. The problem would be if that was the only thing you were doing and you were entirely reliant on the sort of luck of the draw of like 1,000 applications coming in and do you make it up to the top? So the answer is you have to be doing networking to help support and surround what you were doing on a contextual basis to send some materials out. So it's a both and we can talk a little bit more about that later as well. One of the other things in terms of the steps and the ways that our office can help you is to just help you stay organized in this process. Whether it's on the networking side or on the tracking employer targets and having a list and knowing what you're looking at and how long have you been looking at something and whether or not the application is due and when, or who have you met and when was the last time you checked in with them and like how close are they to the industries that you're interested in. All of those things is just a lot of information. Like if you're a more STEMmy kind of person, I'll say it's a lot of data. But the truth is you just need to have a system in place which helps you to approach some of these things with more confidence, with better control, with more curation. So just to have something in place to help you along the way, we can help you to do that. We can help you to make sure that it's a system that works for you too, right? It's not one size fits all in any of this. It's helping you to find something that's comfortable on your side of things. So yeah, setting some goals. What do you want to get out of your experience is usually the first question that we're going to ask you, and you're probably, whether you know it or not, you're asking yourself that before you come into our office. There's always going to be the career question, and career can be, I mentioned that, JoMel mentions there's a lot of C's, right? There's like big C career and little c career. There's the version of like a career as I know it and I've seen it and I can look it up in a book and that's a career. That's not how a lot of careers actually look like once you start building them yourself. But the career question is a fundamental that comes in. What does that mean? What do you want? And what do you even mean when you say something like career? Or when we ask you about career, what do you even think about? Industry is another question that comes up. Where's the focus? Is it broad? Is it multifaceted? Is it many different directions? We can help you to navigate some of those. Does your experience for the summer have something to do with skills? Is it something specific that you want to extract or want to deepen? Or have you been told you need better skills in this direction for future possibilities down certain paths? That's always a factor that we can put into that. And there's actually an academic angle to that as well, whether it's specifically language or it could be a technical skill. It's a CS major who wants to go deeper on the coding, whatever it happens to be. So the skills can be traditional professional skills as we think of them within industry, but there can also be crossover with academic skills in that question. And then, it's listed here last, but it's actually probably one of the most prominent, is a question of region, right? Is it, do I want to be home for the summer? Do I want to be away from home for the summer? Do I want to explore something abroad? Is there a particular metropolitan area I've checked out before? Maybe I've done a bunch of metropolitan things and I'd like to do something in a suburban or rural area. Again, it's no one fit all. And so, yeah, and actually like a tail end to this is, do you need to earn credit? I run the program that's called Prac 471 at Yale, which helps students, if they do need to receive credit for a particular experience, it helps them, in order to qualify in those directions. There's a lot to that question of like why you need to earn credit and what kind of credit you can actually earn. But I'll leave that for a Q&A if people are interested in hearing more. And I will pass it on to JoMel.
Yes, before I receive that baton, Derek, I'm wondering if you could address the first funded internship program or the.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. This because these are mostly like a few of these are mine, like the Buckley, both of them are media and journalism related internships. Now they're internships as opposed to fellowships. I know it says journalism fellowships and we do that for a couple of logistical reasons, but they're actually internships, which means we have partners with the Paul Block Foundation 2 papers that do a hiring process in the fall, 2 more papers that do it in the spring. An internship as opposed to fellowship basically means it's a funded opportunity with a specific organization. Fellowships in general give you funding, which allow you to then chase down possibilities, flexibly, like with that funding. So the Block, really high stand journalism award at the university. A lot of people who go through the YDN and sort of make their route, along the way. The Paul Block tends to be one of the steps they take. It doesn't have to be, but like it does tend to be. The Buckley journalism, or the Buckley, which is actually media, has a little bit of journalism, but it's broader media as well. It's run by the William F. Buckley program. So, it's partnered in with organizations sort of in that vein. And what the 2 have in common are that they're both pre-funded. So they're providing a $5,000 stipend, which again, unlike a fellowship, is not a reimbursement for charges. It's a full stipend where you can use that money whatever way you need to cover your costs for the summer.
Okay, thank you, Derek. And now I'm happy to receive that baton to talk about the resources within our office. So the last funded internship that you see there is called the Yale Alumni Community Service Fellowship, and these are quite unique. They are actually opportunities that are listed through CareerLink, and they are sponsored by corresponding Yale alumni clubs around the country. And there are quite a few alumni clubs that consistently post opportunities for summer through this program. And they can include clubs from Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Minnesota, just as an example. But we hope to reinvigorate more cities for this upcoming summer. And these would involve opportunities working within nonprofits that tackle a number of different topics and issues such as hunger, homelessness, youth development, as well as the arts. Right now, there is a current position available for the DC Youth Orchestra, as an example, and DC is another Yale Alumni Club partner in this program. Each club, they raise the money to offer you the stipend, as well as they generate the opportunity as well amongst their group. So it's a tremendous opportunity, which I hope that you consider. We'll talk about preferred Yale partners in a moment. That's defined later in a slide, but they are also listed under CareerLink as well. And there are a number of great opportunities available around campus. They include opportunities within Dwight Hall, Sci-City, Yale Sustainable Food Project internships, the Yale Undergraduate Research Association, their research database, and a whole lot more around campus. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about the website for a moment. Our landing page, ocs.yale.edu, also called UConnect on our side. You'll see that big banner there, start exploring through the OCS communities. That actually has changed through to customize your weekly OCS newsletter. Now for students, you may notice that you receive a newsletter from us every Monday morning. That includes resources, articles, blog posts, as well as job opportunities and notices for upcoming events. You have the opportunity to customize that newsletter so that it only includes information that is curated based on your career interests. So I would encourage you to actually click on that link the next time that you visit our page and click on the boxes that may apply towards your particular career interests. But you don't have to wait until you receive that newsletter in order to gain access to the newest information, as well as the archived information that exists within the system. They're all housed within, as you see on that top toolbar under the communities section there. And there you'll find a number of different categories, such as our own CGCC team, And that can include areas within government, education, again, my particular specialties, and it will keep you informed as in terms of what's going on within the industry, what sort of opportunities are available for you to apply at this moment, resources within Yale and outside of Yale, and things that you can learn about the industry. So there are other things within our website that can certainly help you. For example, within the Get Prepared section, you'll have tools and resources with regards to creating your resume. We have a great template that's included there, sample cover letters, as well as some great interviewing tips for, let's say, answering behavioral type questions during the interview, and how to create and develop your LinkedIn page. Other areas include jobs and internships. There you'll find job and internship resources, funding opportunities, as well as on-campus recruiting, which has become more reinvigorated as the time prior to the pandemic. More employers are coming on campus here. Now let's address the Yale Career Link page, where you'll certainly find job and internship postings, employer profiles. So this is information that employers give to you as in terms of what they want you to know about themselves. And it can also include great information, such as if they are participating in any upcoming events, if they have any current job postings, as well as key contacts that are available to you to ask some questions about the recruiting cycle and about what it's like to work there.
And that employer directory has about 10,000 companies listed in it, just to give it sort of a scope.
Yeah. And another outstanding resource are the peer lists, which will help you connect with your fellow student who may have worked within their past summers. They can also include alumni that, and some of their experiences may include organizations or career areas where you aspire to work. So that's a great resource within Career Linked as well. And of course, a list of our events, which you can RSVP to. They're both virtual and now more and more in person, as well as Career Shift. Career Shift is a platform that will enable you to gain the access to the professional email addresses of individuals that you wish to reach out to.
And much like a few other resources that they weren't all named in here, but CareerShift represents resources that it's a premium service, which normally costs hundreds of dollars to have access to, that you get for free just by using our, the Yale Career Link. So like when you sign up for the Yale Career Link, you might feel like, is that just another site? Like, what's it for? But it has like a jobs board, an employer directory, like hundreds of dollars of free resources to help you like chase down things across the, the interweb. Like it's actually quite a bundle that you're being given access to.
Yeah, it does all the work for you. Okay, so we touched upon preferred Yale partners. We work closely with many Yale alums, donors, employers that hire Yale students on a regular basis across all industries, and we call them preferred Yale partners. Preferred Yale partners. You can search for these opportunities offered by preferred Yale partners directly using YCL. So once you log on, you'll be clicking on the Jobs tab and search for jobs. And then you'll be clicking Choose More filters and then select Preferred Yale Partner. So you'll be clicking on Yes. From there, you can also search by location, industry, and job function, as well as a number of different criteria.
JoMel, am I right that I believe the alumni partners that come through 1stGen Yale are preferred Yale partners, right?
Yes.
Don't they fall into that category?
Yes.
So if it doesn't get mentioned, if it hasn't been mentioned yet, I'm sure we'll mention it more. There's this fantastic partnership between 1stGen Yale and our office where for, and this will get into when we talk about the SCA and funding awards. But just as an example, like all those fantastic, like dozens and dozens of partners that the Alumni Association has put together at the 1stGen are in this category. So when they send something to us, it's not like it just gets stuffed at the bottom of a bag. It falls into this special category of a preferred partner.
Well, and let me jump in. Sorry to interrupt, but you gave me the opportunity. I'm Lisa Chapman. I'm president of 1stGenYale, and Michael and I and Barb Petrosio work very focused on a program called 1stGenYale Summer Bulldogs, which is our summer internship program for students on financial aid. And that is the program that Derek and Jormir are talking about. And we'll talk about a little later, but that is absolutely a great example of how we work in partnership, where over the last 3 years, we have placed 150 Yale College students on financial aid in summer internships around the world, the US and internationally. And they're funded by Yale through the Office of Career Strategy, the SCA Award, and also funded through the Office of Fellowships and Funding through Rebecca Westphal.
Yep.
So we can get to that later, but I just want to.
That's a fantastic partnership.
Yes, it may be on future slides. You can add our 1stGenYale Summer Bulldogs. So we're now.
Yeah, we should. I was thinking of that. This would have been where I think we need to update our slide deck.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay, so informational interviewing will be an important aspect of the job search process, and it's a powerful networking tool where you are able to learn a lot about various career paths and build relationships in the future. Although an informational interview may lead to a job offer, that's not necessarily the primary goal. The focus is to learn more about the person's organization, their role, and the path they took to get there. So when you, and we'll get into crafting that correspondence in a moment, but when you ask for an informational interview, you're essentially asking for advice and insight and guidance, which that professional can certainly provide for you. But if you ask for an opportunity, that individual may not necessarily know if there's one that exists, or they might not be empowered to talk about that with you at the very moment. But to borrow a technique from improv, the yes and technique, you always want to make sure that you have a way for them to continue the conversation with you so that you can develop that relationship. So I think by asking advice and insight, which they can readily give, that will generate additional questions for you and also help you in creating an action plan moving forward, which you can report back about to your newly developed contact later on.
Remember too, that's more natural than it sounds, right? Because when you're approaching an informational interview, what you're really doing is building relationships with people who are interested in things that you're interested in. So, from the outside looking in, it might sound like, oh, you're slow selling and you're actually trying to get to the important stuff later, but that's not the case. Like the stuff that you're talking about early is actually getting you in context, getting you closer to the things that you're passionate about, the passions you share with these alumni and other people. So, just to underline the fact, this is actually far more organic than it might sound when we talk about it in like clinical terms.
Sure. So what can you use to start and identify alumni? As I mentioned a moment ago, you can utilize a peer list in CareerLink, as well as Cross Campus, which is a platform managed by the Alumni Office to help you connect with Yale alumni. With the peer lists, you can find them through CareerLink. So they would be listed under Resources, then Career Library, and then you can filter the search a little bit further by clicking on Category, and then choosing Peer Networking Lists, Yale students and graduates. And what this will provide for you are several lists. One could be a summer experience list for the prior year, the prior summer, summer 2022, and then going back several summers, as well as class lists So that will be detailing information from recent grads about where they placed at the time of their graduation. This information is accumulated based on surveys that we send out to students and recent alumni. And it will include information such as their contact email, as well as the organization of where they worked, geography, their class year, and sometimes it details feedback as in terms of their recruiting experience and what it was like to work there. So it's an opportunity for you to reach out to learn more about their experiences being recruited for that company, as well as asking them questions about, what it was like to work there. Did it impact your career trajectory in any way? Would you work there again? And perhaps they can also connect you with members of that organization. So this is just a glimpse of cross-campus. Another way for you to connect with alumni. First, I would advise for you to create a profile for yourself. And then you can search for alumni, find fellow Yalees, and then narrow down that criteria based on your career interests. LinkedIn is also another great way, as you may know, to connect with Yale alumni. They have a fabulous Yale LinkedIn page there. In order to search for alumni there, you would just click on alumni. And as you can see from that little glimpse of the page there, there's a couple of different criteria detailed there, where they live and where they work. If you scroll to the right, there'll be additional detail there, which can include what they studied, what they're highly skilled at, their job function, and other criteria. And if you scroll down the page a little bit more, once you set some criteria and also maybe include a keyword in the search box, then it will give you a list of alumni that fit that criteria that you selected.
And if this feels like a lot, which it is, this is exactly the sort of, we mentioned exploration and a back and forth in a conversation. It's not just like we throw you these resources and you're out with the wolves. Like, this is the exact kind of process that in an advising session, we'd be able to walk you through, help you to better understand the resource, take advantage of all the different bells and whistles.
Okay, so we'll get into the informational interview and what that correspondence can look like. So this is an example of an intro. Hi, my name is Julia. Stephanie Wade gave me your name and number and said you were someone I should speak with regarding career paths in higher education. I'm a Yale student interested in counseling and student affairs. I'd like the chance to hear about your work experience, your organization's activity, and advice you have for someone exploring this field. So some important pieces of information given here, which is naming a connection that the person on the receiving end would recognize, and also specifying, what the writers or job seekers' interests are, so that the professional would know that that piece of information, as well as a little bit more about yourself, that you're studying specific things and have interest in specific things, and also mentioning that the professional that you're writing to has expertise in these areas and would be the best person to approach in answering some of these questions here. I'm sorry, Derek. But then we have the ask. So continuing on with the correspondence, might you be available to talk for perhaps 30 minutes in the upcoming week for you to discuss your work and career? I would love to have a chance to hear your story and learn from your experience. So just setting the the kind of protocol there as in terms of how to continue the conversation. You can certainly request a 30-minute phone or Zoom conversation. And as well as I think to add here is to express gratitude for the opportunity to do so.
You might need funding if funding is as we started, in the initial frame, like money is a big part of this, or the lack thereof, or the difficulty, or the process of searching. So just to keep in mind that there are several funding options that you would probably be wanting to explore. We mentioned some, and we'll get more specific about the ones that our office is directly involved in. But you can't have a conversation about a summer funding opportunity without thinking about the fellowships office. So that's now this is specifically leading you over to the student grants database, which is where like 260, 270 different Yale fellowships live within that database. It's searchable by what's my class here. You can use keyword, you can use a geographic, whatever it happens to be, or you can just spend a very late evening walking your way through all 280 of the fellowships and like seeking out the ones that are directly interesting in terms of like things that you're marking for a summer. They can support, and they do tend to be framed in that way. Is it a geography? Is it a specific interest? I will say, like, the fellowships do tend to be most embracive of things that are very clearly either research related, international travel related, public service related. Those tend to be like 3 of the friendliest categories, but they are also adaptable. And I've worked with a lot of students when they hit the student grants database, they kind of bounce off and they think, oh, well, there was nothing on there for me, because they all use this language that feels very distant. But the truth of it is, like, when it says something like a research fellowship, it doesn't necessarily there's nothing that says that has to be like purely academic research. We've had students who have taken a research fellowship in order to like have a sustained engagement with an artist in another country, because that's a form of research. Like if you're a theater studies major, like that's exactly the kind of research that you need to be doing. So just know this database is here. You can walk through it. It can be more flexible than it might look at first pass. And also the Office of Fellowships can be very helpful in helping you to better discern exactly what's available there. The Summer Experience Award, so we've mentioned it quite a few times. We definitely need to update the slide deck because I don't think anyone even remembers it was called the Domestic Summer Award anymore. But the SEA, as we keep talking about it, that's a huge piece, and I think we're going to have a couple of slides that are going to get dive a little bit deeper into that as a category. But there's also not just the fellowships, but the funding office has additional funding opportunities that aren't Yale specific. Categories of like external links to outside resources, or just ways to frame and think, or even suggested opportunities to go back to your department if you in your major, or go back to your college, because sometimes the colleges have like small pockets of discretionary funding that could be useful in different ways. So within that funding category, the one that we're going to underline for today, for a couple of reasons, the Summer Experience Award, because our office runs it. So we're the ones that you'd want to be talking with, like with an interest here. And also because, again, this is part of the partnership that we have with 1stGen is coming through the Summer Experience Award as a funding opportunity. And also because, you, Jormel, and myself, like we oversee 2 categories, like the creative careers and the common good, which are directly related to what the Summer Experience Award was built for. It was basically built for the idea that when a student is on any form of financial aid at the university, when they look into certain industries, and those tend to be things like common good or creative, those are industries that have a lot of unpaid internships and a lot of like, and how do I make that work? And if I need to get paid for a summer, and if I've got bills to pay and I need to come back to campus with some kind of contribution, like, any of those sorts of questions, the Summer Experience Award was, we pitched and pitched and pitched. And then the development office one year finally said, sure, like we'll do something with that. And this is what we got. So it's a fantastic, really game-changing sort of a resource. But there's a couple things to know about it. It's for unfunded or underfunded opportunities. So it's possible that you'll find something that it just won't work for you, but maybe they do have a small stipend, they're paying you a little bit, but it's not enough to cover most of your costs. The SEA can still be used for an opportunity that's paying you up to $1,500 in its own independent stipend. And if that opportunity is paying you a little bit more than that, or even like a lot of bit more than that, you can negotiate with them. We've had students say, hey, listen, I love the fact that you're trying to pay me $3,000 for this thing, but like, if you could cut that in half and give me 1,500, then I could go back and get my SCA and tack it on top. Now, this isn't like, you're not going to find this in the rule book anywhere on whether or not you can or cannot do that, but like, yes, you can. The answer is there's flexibility. We want to make sure we're helping you as much as we can help you. Jormel and I sit on the committee, which makes the decisions on whether or not these things are like usable or workable. And we are very friendly to the fact that we want you to be able to get as much funding as you can get within the bounds, right? Like within the different restrictions that are in place. One of those restrictions, you can only get paid up to $1,500 on top of whatever you're using for the SEA. Predominantly, the Summer Experience Award is for nonprofit, NGO, government, educationally based sorts of things. That said, there's a subcategory for the arts, which is called the Arts Apprenticeship, which can be used quite a bit broadly. And that's when you're working with anyone who's creatively focused. You could be a writer, a director, a publisher, an agent, any sort of person who's like living within creative fields. They basically are taking you on in a more of a one-on-one mentored capacity. And so as an apprenticeship, even though that might be a for-profit, I mean, a writer, a painter, artist, those people are for profit. But they also tend to be people that are for profit and could never pay someone to assist them for the summer. And so the Arts Apprenticeship as a SCA offshoot can be helping you in those directions. It can be used for research as well. That's not my bag as much, but it actually is an exciting potential that a lot of people, particularly on the STEM and humanities academic side, if you're not finding the fellowships that are using their potential funding there, or if it's capped out, or something just didn't work for you, the SCA can be used in these categories as well. It provides $4,000 for US for domestic base, but $6,000 if you happen to be doing the same kind of thing but overseas. You can drop into this link over here. We can follow up with more detail, but also if you just go to our website, the website, not Yale Career Link, so it's ocs.yale.edu, go /SEA, and basically it'll give you all the same detail that I'm talking about right now. Let's see, the next slide goes, so some additional qualifiers for this. I already talked about the $1,500. Another important aspect of this is it does need to last for at least 8 weeks over the summer, and it needs to last for at least 30 hours a week. Now, when I'm working with artists in the Arts Apprenticeship, that can kind of be a stickler. Like people will say, like, when an artist isn't going to work with me for 30 hours a week, and that could be totally true, and they don't need to. They need to be able to help you in supplement to whatever they're doing. They can be putting you on independent research projects. They can be putting you on, a scope project that has you doing most of the build on it. And then at some point, like you're coming back and re-engaging with them on a regular basis, but not an everyday kind of basis. So there, again, just remember, there's a lot of flexibility here. And if you have questions, come to our office, set an appointment, have a conversation, and we can walk you through like the best approaches to make sure that the thing that you're looking for qualifies. Two important details that are related. One, you'll see that the deadline is May 1st. If you have looked at the range of things and deadlines across the university, you will already recognize that is an extremely late deadline, and it's to purpose. We know that there are a lot of different things like those fellowships, right? You should start with your fellowships. Most of those fellowship funding opportunities deadline at like February 15th. That's not even that far away, right? And there's some that trickle out into March and that sort of thing. So the SCA is intended to be, not that it's a last ditch, right? Because it's actually a really great opportunity that you can do amazing things with, but because it can be something that's intended to make it accessible and approachable, then you have the SCA as something as a second stage that you can be looking at. You can be having the conversations and building towards the possibilities, but those same conversations can be about fellowship funding. And then if those don't tend to work out, you have the SCA in the background that can be used at that point. Related to that is the idea that the SCA can only be used once. So strategically, you have to be thinking, are you first year, second year? It can be used through your junior summer, or basically technically, you can use it up until the point where you're no longer coming back to Yale. So if you're like a fifth year senior, then actually you do have like one extra summer and you're coming back. But otherwise, like, you do want to use it while you still have it. So strategically, we're usually talking about if you have access to it, when do you want to use it? Do you want to use it early? Do you want to save it, use it later? Any of those sorts of things. So May 1st deadline, and you can only use it once. Additional summer programs. Let's see. Yeah, this is a slide just reminding you that there's a lot of other resources. Summer sessions, study abroad, fellowships. We mentioned a couple of them already. The reason they're on here is because they're our cousins, right? They live in the same area, the same building, the same floor. We do have a lot of overlap. We work with them in partnership in a lot of ways. So we're not alone in this. And even so, you can come to our office and have conversations that are about career stuff and how that career stuff lies right next to the fact that you want to study abroad for the summer, and lies right next to the fact that you actually, no, I need extra credits for a summer session. How do I make that work and still look for like a creative careers opportunity or something along those lines? So we live together in that way, which can be helpful. And CIP.yale.edu is sort of the family, the umbrella that we live under, Center for International and Professional Experience. And what about developing a plan of action, Jermel?
Yeah, definitely. This is just to bring it all home so that we can get to some of the wonderful questions that are coming in. First, determine your goals and your interests. 2, review your application materials as well. That includes your resume, your cover letter. Again, you can get some great templates and suggestions through our website, but then you have us as a resource to provide you with some advising towards those materials. Make sure that you read the career strategy newsletter for upcoming career events and opportunities that comes into your email inbox every Monday morning. And if you don't have a chance to get to that, what you can do is you can move that into a folder in your email so that you can refer to that later, or make sure that you just check in with our OCS website because you'll have access to that information there, as well as find opportunities in CareerLink and other online resources that we talked about earlier. Network through informational interviewing, because you can get a lot of great candid advice, insights, and information that will help you develop professionally. Again, meet with an OCS advisor with any questions along the way. We're certainly here to help you and be a resource for you. And then apply to positions of interest. Continue applying until you accept a position. Then make sure that you withdraw your candidacy from any other positions you've applied to. So with regards to our information, again, you can set up 30 or 45-minute advising appointments, or even 15-minute quick question appointments on a variety of different topics that can include resume or interviewing, all scheduled through our CareerLink system. To contact us, our general email address is careerstrategy@yale.edu. We don't do resume reviews.
Yeah, we need to update that
out. Yes, but
that was discontinued just this year.
Yes, but we'd love to speak with you with regards to your resume. So make sure that you schedule some time with us through a 15-minute appointment or a 30-minute appointment through CareerLink. For any questions regarding the SEA, SEA@yale.edu. Our website again is OCS@yale.edu for all of the career and job internship search resources. Q&A.
Any questions?
All right. We have quite a number of really good questions in the pipeline. I have bucketed some of those because they're asking for the same thing. But first and foremost, we have a couple of questions around the recession that's coming. So there are 2 branches to this question. The first one is, how do you choose between job search during a recession versus applying for graduate school? And I'm going to just spit out the second branch now, is that in thinking about what kind of industry to go into, what are some of the industries that are more quote unquote recession proof?
Yeah, taking on that first question, right? The timing for something like whether or not to go directly into or to hold off on. I will actually say, there are always multiple factors in this, right? And one of those factors would be if you're already, making a consideration for whether it's going to be a gap, something that you're going to do, but you want to be going to grad school, then that would be a scenario where you might, if you see a recession around, if you're sort of afeared that you're not going to be finding something that's going to be as productive or as cumulative as it needs to be for a first year postgrad experience, can you or should you accelerate into like that thing that you were already planning to do like a couple of years down the road? That's absolutely something that could be considered. What I wouldn't recommend though is making a decision where you're hiding out in something that you weren't planning to do anyway, or you were kind of only vaguely thinking about it. And oh no, the recession is now going to convince me I'm no longer going to try the industry. I'm going to do that other thing because it feels safer, it feels more ready. I would advise against that usually. But though, again, like most of this, as I sort of mentioned before, most of this would come down to like a deeper individual conversation about like what are the important factors that you have in your background, what things were you considering before you got concerned about a recession, and like what other things were you factoring in that would be independent of whether or not that recession is going to have impact on the jobs you're going to draw. All of that said, though, I would normally even think you have to take, you can't make a comparison without like the full information, right? So even if you're feeling second guessing or squeamish about like what the job market might look at like within the particular industry you're looking at, you would want to leave both doors still open, which would mean, yeah, you could probably start up the cycle and make sure you have the preparation in place so that you're working towards the possibility of going to grad school, taking the tests if they're required, doing the whatever preparation and networking is necessary in those directions, thinking about what you want to be researching like in grad school, that sort of thing. But at the same time, you should be doing all of your same industry litmus of putting out feelers, doing the networking, engaging with people, because you might end up surprising yourself in terms of what the expectation or the nominals might be for what's available in an industry. And actually you take a few measured and well-founded steps in that direction and find out you do find something that's really meaningful for you. And if you don't give yourself that chance, you don't really have a point of comparison and you're working just in a theoretical. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
I affirm everything that Derek has just expressed as well. Be well informed before you make this decision. It doesn't have to be, exactly at this point, one or the other. There are certain job functions and industries where you aspire to work, which may require a graduate degree. So that could be part of your decision-making plan as well. But like Derek said, stay informed, keep up with your informational interviewing. And I think that a decision will emerge in time that makes most sense for you. But that question doesn't have to be answered right away.
There was a second part to that question, which is,
Recession-proof.
are there recession-proof industries or industries or types of organizations that are more likely to still be hiring if we do enter a recession, from what you've seen?
Yeah, there are, but I'm going to qualify my response for that as well. In advising, I would normally use that as a secondary concern. I would use that as a qualifier once we've already moved past the point of like, what are the industries that you actually want to be a part of? I don't think I've ever advised anyone to chase an industry because it's recession-proof. It is a factor. And I would lay those kinds of thoughts and considerations on a second layer once we've already seen like what is either attracting one or professionally drawing one or in conversation with kind of academics that you've already committed a huge chunk of the beginning of your professional life towards. Any of those things would be the first things we'd be talking about. But then, yeah, like splitting the difference. So you're looking at two different things and they're equally, or at least like to be compared in terms of your points of interest. Yeah, at that point, we would likely be factoring in, okay, is there a recession coming? What does that mean? But it's usually going to be a holistic determination. It won't simply be, oh no, that one's not recession proof, so let's take that off the table. It might be, well, let's think about like if you go that route and if there is a little bit more risk involved, like what are the alternatives? Like what would happen if your first job out within a year, like right now we're in an interesting mode. And this is one of the reasons why I would say you want to be careful with making it a first or primary consideration. 2 years ago, what felt recession-proof? Tech felt recession-proof. We were in the midst of COVID. And everyone's like, oh, Zoom and everything else, like tech will never go away. It's the fundamental of our universe. And now we're 2 years later, we're a little bit, let's hope, like, true post-COVID. And like what's recessing? Tech is recessing. So you don't want to make a determination on this year's trend on a factor that's going to be a primary factor. You're usually going to like factor that in conversation with all the other important things that you're considering.
Also,
Thank
there's also a distinction between a job function and industry. Tech, right now, as in terms of big tech, they may be experiencing layoffs right now. But then there are other industries that are recruiting people that have those skill sets. So government, for example, and certain banks and investment firms are big recruiters of those affected by tech layoffs. So that's something to consider as well.
Another specific, sorry, go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, let me jump in because I'm getting emails from students as well. One of the questions that's come in, which is, while the tech industry is going through a transition, what skills are recommended? What skill base, knowledge base, the things students should be aware of now while they're students? So, and what courses should they think about? Should they be taking a computer science course? Should they be taking a data science course? What kinds of skills are relevant and credible today to be successful in the future as they graduate out 1, 2, 3 years from now? So it's really the skills base they're looking to develop through the coursework they're selecting. What would you recommend?
For sure. There's something interesting in the specifics of the Yale education and the broader Ivy education, and also how that stands in contrast to something like whether in a creative side, the conservatory versus like the liberal arts. And I will say that the recruiters we work with are not commonly recruiting Yaleys for particular technical skills. They don't, if they wanted particular technical skills, there are plenty of schools that do that better than Yale does. And to some degree, Yale's okay with that. Now we have this, Yale's putting a lot of money into CS and it's improving. And so I don't want to, diminish that like in any foundational way. But I would say like, you don't necessarily want to be thinking about it in terms of, am I going to be a CS major at Yale because I feel like that's going to open more doors for me, or I'll get like more strongly recruited. We have just as many people that are recruited or land in a big tech kind of a company that are, humanities majors and English majors and psych majors and cog-sci majors, history majors, right? So I also work as a college advisor as well. So like talking students through the process of their academics and what classes to choose and those sorts of things. And again, like, though I have to wear two hats and sometimes it's, there can be bleed over between like a career basis and an academic basis, I'm actually pretty comfortable with the idea that a student shouldn't be making too many direct decisions about this, at least strong and defining decisions about majors or about like, a strong emphasis in the direction of like doing a bunch of coding classes through the CS or something along those lines, just because of like the potential appeals that could have like within an industry. The strongest thing that a Yale applicant has going for them is the strength of both the steeped liberal arts engagement, the concept of being a qualified, incredible communicator, incredible writer, incredible reader, incredible analyzer. Those are things that Yale gives you regardless of what major you're going to be. So I would say like thinking about the things you're already doing, the classes that speak to you, that really draw you along and draw you towards a senior project or a senior thesis, which is going to give you a strong connection with an academic advisor, which will be meaningful and potentially can be someone who can help you along the ways. Those are most of the more important things that a student should be asking themselves academically. And then at the same time, like how to define those things, extract them and narrate them within materials when they're pitching themselves with a cover letter, with a resume, with an interview preparation, any of those things. And a person, whether they be a CS major or they could be, a history of art major, and that's so those same people potentially could be extracting very similar, quantifiable, extractable, and transferable skills from this coursework that they're doing between two vastly different majors. Will there be a difference in the technical skills that might be involved there? Yes, but With the cost per credit at Yale, I would almost advise someone, unless they just love CS, and there's plenty of people who do, and that's what they should be doing. But if you don't, and you just want the skills and you just want it so that you'll wrap it into something down the road, you'd probably be better off using something like the free LinkedIn Learning account that you have at Yale to pick up those coding things, get credentialed like through LinkedIn Learning, add it to your resume, and then for the credits that mean a lot and are actually building your relationship with faculty, you're taking the courses that mean something to you and that move you forward academically at Yale, communally at Yale. That's my take, and I know that's a little bit of a sharp take, so I'll let Jormel go in his opinion.
Yeah, I want to underscore something that Derek mentioned, which is employers, they also value what's called soft, transferable, or what's also called core competencies. And this includes things like communication, critical thinking and problem solving, leadership, and teamwork, and use of technology. And these are skills that, especially for students, have done so and demonstrated through their coursework, as well as some of the outstanding work that you have done through a lot of your participation in student organizations and work around the community. I've seen some great Excel spreadsheets where students have taken each one of these core competencies and then outlined examples of when they demonstrated them through these various means. And it's important for you to take hold of this, because this is how employers, when going through the recruiting process, become better acquainted with your past work, because it sounds familiar to them. Because since you've illustrated this through example, they can gain a better sense of seeing you do this exact skill. So don't disregard these software or core competency skills as well.
And Jim, as you get ready for your next set of questions, there's also graduate students in attendance. Are there any questions from graduate students?
If so, please feel free to
I think
pop
they're in the
up
chat.
or send a chat.
And I think one of them was whether Summer Bulldogs applied to, or the SCA program applied to graduate students. And I think the answer to that is no.
Unfortunately, the answer to that is no. At this stage, there's always room for growth and expansion, but at this stage, the SCA, which is kind of the kernel, which it's all built on top of, is exclusively for undergraduates.
So are there a lot of internships for graduate students?
There are internships graduate students, for you in the audience who are graduate students, you probably know this and feel this, like there's a lot of problems with trying to find internships, both in terms of the kind of conversations you're having with faculty about taking the time off and what that means, and whether you're exposing yourself as being looking for something in industry as opposed to in academics. There's timing issues in terms of like the summers not necessarily being as open for a graduate student as it would be for an undergraduate. That said, there are plenty of internships that don't care one way or another. Like, and a little bit towards what Jormel was saying, like the deliverables of soft skills, the being able to patch together a narrative to say with these previous experiences. I mean, graduate students are phenomenal in terms of like being able to speak through high level of communications. You know, they're publishing things, they're doing presentations. They're usually, you know, really good with PowerPoint. Like those sorts of skills are things that like are quite common in terms of like high level internships where they're expecting people to come and be able to deliver like, you know, without a huge amount of training. So you know, I would normally say you're looking in the same pools. There's not like a special pool or a special way to be, you know, chasing any of these things down. The question, as it was sort of specifically oriented towards the funding side of that, yeah, you're at a disadvantage as a graduate student because there is not an equivalent to the SEA. And I do also believe, Jormel, correct me if I'm wrong here, that most of the fellowships too. There are some graduate specific fellowships. So I don't want to say there's nothing available, but some of the ones that we were talking about or thinking about are more geared towards summer experiences for undergrads. But there are, you know, if you go over to that student grants database, you can actually put in, you know, graduate student, like, and you'll see like there are dozens that are available there, but there are also a large number of them that are geared towards the undergrads.
Thank you. June, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right, so I have two types of questions. Let's do a round of rapid fire, quick answer questions. So I have three in the queue for you. The first one is, how often can students make appointments at the OCS? Is that once per week, a semester? What does that look like?
I'm going to get myself in trouble if I say too much on this particular. But I'll say it. I don't put a capper on how often I meet with students. Other advisors, and actually, I think the best practice is that there's supposed to be some kind of a capper. But usually, I'll just say it this way: I work with students as often as I can and that they need. Right. So I've had students where I've worked with for once a week for 3 weeks in a row, because they had a huge application coming up and we were working on a couple of different, and I don't think I'm alone in this. Like, and I know JournMail does these sorts of things too. We try to work with students around the requirements and sort of like the focused dedication of what a project or something that they're looking at. So, now from your side, from the student side, you also just want to be appreciative of the fact that when you have big things coming on, and if we're flexible, that we can bring you in as often as we need to. Also know, like, if there's a gap in time, maybe you don't need to like stack together 3 appointments, if other people might need that space for now. So JournMail, you can give us the better answer to that though. Like, what are we actually supposed to do?
Well, I completely agree with you, Derek. You'll see through our website possibly and other advertisements that it will state something to the effect of no more than one appointment with any advisor within a 2-week period. But I do agree with Derek. I will see students as often as once a week. But I'm also willing to engage with students if I have a better understanding of your situation, if we've been working with each other for a while, and I can understand where your needs are and give you that extra time. So you can you can ignore that publicity regarding the 2-week rule.
For JournMail and for I don't want to overpromise for advisors who might be abiding by like the best practice.
Sure.
Well, I
Sure.
appreciate that. Second fire round, a quick rapid fire round. Is OCS open after 5 p.m. or what about nights or weekends?
So our office isn't open in terms of like walking into the office and being open past 5 p.m. And we are my advising sessions are purely hybrid. So in theory, I'm available like whenever my advising sessions are. I don't actually, just because I've got kids at home and need to do the other stuff, I don't keep my advising appointments at I think the latest ones are usually around 4 p.m. or something like that. But yeah, I would probably follow up like exactly what kind of resources are they looking for after 5 p.m.
Yeah,
Question might be,
definitely.
can they speak to someone? I think that might be what they're thinking about. I assume the building is closed in terms of being able to access materials, but I guess
Building is closed, but we're also all of us are available via email as well. So if you got a question, and again, like we it's not a guarantee I'll be able to get to it like overnight or something like that, but like send an email. So if you send it to careerstrategy@yale.edu, that only gets checked during office hours during the day. You can use that as a primary, and then that will like end up going anywhere where it needs to go. But I'm going to underline what JournMail just said. It's really more about you wouldn't want to like send a midnight email to someone you've never even worked with before. But if I worked with you, if I know the context, if I'm not going to have to catch up to a bunch of stuff, and you send me something like early in the morning, I'll probably be able to read it, while I'm coming into the office, and I might be able to have an answer for you. So we try to do what we can to make sure we're as available as possible.
Derek, this question, I'm getting the emails from students as well. This question is coming from first-gen low-income students who work for paid jobs to be able to go to Yale, as well as the academic schedule.
Yeah.
They're not available in the afternoons. And that's why they're asking, is it after hours are there any night sessions? How about on weekends? As well as questions we're getting from athletes who also have a rigorous practice schedule. They're not able to be at OCS from.
So we have an advisor, Robin Akampora, who's our athletics advisor, who spends an entire day over at the gym.
Okay, so is that
all
new?
the-
Is that new in terms of the?
No, she's been doing that for years. So they might want to, if you're an athlete and if you haven't heard about it or checked into it yet,
Okay.
you might want to, when you go into our appointments within the Yale Career Link, one of the types you can pull down is actually athletics. So they're exclusively for athletics related, and for one, again, like Robin has flexibility in terms of being able to do hybrid appointments and those sorts of things, but she has an entire day that's dedicated, and she's actually at the gym the whole day, understanding that it's very difficult for athletes to make it all the way over to our
Okay,
office.
well, what about the students who work
Yeah.
from 3 to 4? How do they use OCS?
Yeah, so I know, you're working, when you're working at, I had an on-campus job at Yale, I worked in the dining hall, I was cleaning dishes for most of my time. It's very difficult to do. It's going to have to be finding a pattern. So I try to keep my appointments, some early morning appointments, some mid-afternoon appointments, late afternoon appointments. So in general, what will end up happening is there's going to be one small window that probably, if you're looking for a session with me, but the reason it would likely work, and even though it might not be optimal, is Jormel keeps an entirely different schedule than I keep, and Robin keeps an entirely different schedule than both of us. So between all of that, you pretty much have a coverage for every hour of the day between like 9 in the morning until around 4:30 at night. Like there's going to be some kind of a pocket of availability. So even though that could be a limiter and it maybe be only once every 2 weeks or something like that you actually have the window open, none of us are only keeping it like at one band of time. So if you are working in afternoons and you have mostly morning classes, it might be on that Tuesday or Thursday because you don't have the morning class at 11 or something like that. You'll just have to sort of reach in and find the window. We don't tend to do, we just can't. Like, our advising schedule is pretty packed as it is, and we spend a huge portion of our week with advising, but we don't tend to be able to do nights and weekends. We'll occasionally do events like tonight, like we're showing up for this event, but it just, we're advisors, we're directors of programs, and it's just really hard for us to stack on like nights and weekends on top of the regular schedule. So though that's not, I know that doesn't solve anything necessarily, but what I would say is, you can reach out. And if you're not finding, I have students all the time who they want an appointment with me, they're not finding it, they'll reach out and email and say, listen, I've seen all the scheduled openings you have, and nothing's working with my class schedule. Like, is there something we could do? Like, I'm more flexible on a Friday. Like, do you have anything there? And I work with them and try to find a way to slot them in.
Thank you.
That's
June, I
great.
know we're running close to time. Any other questions?
Let's do the last one. For our freshmen on the line, what kind of advice do you have or steps can be taken for first years in looking for internships in the spring or summer or sophomore year?
Sure. Well, I mean, as soon as you said first year, my first thought is come into our office as soon as you can. We see a lot of students who wait until sophomores, fine too, right? Like you're busy first year and maybe you're looking in other directions. But if you already have, a staked interest in it doesn't have to be in a particular direction. It can just be in the direction of like, I want to find out more about myself and I want to talk with someone about these things, what I'm interested in and what that means. The earlier you can start the conversations with our office, the better. I mentioned that, we tend to have these ongoing relationships over time, and that's exactly what it should be. And you don't want to like force it all into like a junior year or senior year or something along those lines. So if you're a first year, I mean, I know it's not anything specific, but like come into our office if you haven't been there before. If you haven't had if you're on this call and you haven't had an advising session with our office, the first thing you should be doing is like dropping in and trying to set up an appointment. Well, it doesn't have to be right now. You can, but as soon as you're available, as soon as you have the time frame, try to start a conversation with our office as soon as you can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Lisa close with this because I think that this is where the SCA can be very important, because I've seen through Summer Bulldogs, some students have had some incredible experiences from a work standpoint during that first or second year of college, and it's going to make them more marketable going forward. I don't know if Lisa had anything else to add to that.
Yeah,
but
let me add. I just want to end on this note. This is on our website, 1stGenYale.org. It's the link to the Summer Bulldogs program. You can link on and you can click on our report from 2020. and you can read all the way through what we did, how we did it. We have an entire list of all the students and who did what. We also have footnotes in here, so you can look at, I'm just going down the scroll, you can look at all the internships we placed, where we placed students. We have photos. We talk about all the different workshops we've put on. So this is really for any student on financial aid. We're focused on first gen and low income, but the funding from OCS requires the student to be on financial aid. The funding from the Office of Fellowships and Funding is a competitive funding, and it's merit-based. You don't need to be on financial aid. We also have companies in our list, both nonprofit companies and for-profit companies, who actually pay for interns. So our list of opportunities is broad. We're actually
That's great.
expanding our corporate opportunities for first-gen low-income students because companies are looking for Yale first-gen low-income students. But go check out our website, which looks like this, in terms of the Summer Bulldog section. You can read all about it. We are now in the process of contacting our sponsors from the last 3 years, as well as marketing to new nonprofit and for-profit companies. The opportunity will be available for students after you come back in January. So it'll be like the third week in January, you'll be able to log in and see the opportunities. What we do is we act as the back office. So the student uploads the resume, transcript, and a little cover letter. You will see the list of opportunities, which are worldwide. You will be able to apply to a couple of them. And then the sponsors will then select you to interview. We will help with the interviews. The sponsor sends an invitation to work with them for the summer. And then we make sure that you need to follow up through the Office of Fellowships and Funding for the SEA Award or the Office of Fellowships and Funding. But as Derek had said earlier, you need to go now to the Office of Fellowships and Funding and to the funding link and look at what's going on now, because now you can apply for funding. You don't need to have the internship in hand, but you have to apply for funding first for the Office of Fellowships and Funding. And then once you get your internship, you add that to your file. So it's a little bit backward. For OCS, you need to have the internship in hand to then apply for the SEA award, which the deadline, as Eric said, is May 1st. So there are two different opportunities for funding. The Yale is incredibly generous. Over the last 3 years, Yale has funded over $500,000 for 150 Yale students who've been through our program in these summer internships. So the opportunity is there. Many of our students who've started with Summer Bulldogs have ended up with full-time research positions, such as in the School of Public Health, School of Medicine. So if you're interested in working with Yale faculty throughout the campus, we will have summer internship opportunities there. If you're interested in looking in nonprofit, government service, et cetera, the arts, we will have those as well. We're just not there yet. We'll be there in the end, really the middle of January. But reach out to us. The email for Summer Bulldogs is sb23@1stgenyale.org. For questions related to anything related to 1stGenYale, please contact us directly at 1stGenYale@1stgenyale.org. And one of our alumni would be glad to get back to you. We totally support and work in partnership with OCS, especially on the Summer Bulldogs program, in terms of getting the information out. And we run it as volunteers. We don't get funding from Yale. We run it ourselves as volunteers, but we want to help you succeed. So anyway, we also want to make sure students go to OCS as often and as soon as possible. So don't be afraid. Go in there, make an appointment, even if you don't know what you're even going to talk about. That's where you start. You have to start the dialogue. You have to start with, I think I like healthcare. I think I like the environment. Where do I go with this? That's a perfectly good first question for Derek or Jamil or anybody on their staff. You don't need to have the answers. You have to have the questions, and they're going to help you discover your own journey and help you through that path. So, and we're here as alumni volunteers because we've been in your shoes. We've been in where you're looking for jobs. We can help you with how we overcame obstacles or challenges and what things we have, but we're not the career office. We're alumni who want to help you in your journey by sharing our stories and being supportive to you and for you. And that's what 1stGenYale comes in. So Michael,
Thank
thank you for giving me the opportunity to close on Summer Bulldogs. I will turn back to you to close the session.
Derek and Zoramel, do you have anything else you'd like to say as we end the session? You've been very insightful about all the things you provided, all the information. Anything else you want to say in closing to students?
Thank you so much for having us. I always appreciate engaging with such a meaningful group of people, the volunteers, but also the students. So yeah, just thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for organizing the event this evening. It was wonderful to see everyone in attendance, and we hope to meet you all very soon for advising appointments.
Thank you, everyone. Make your appointments at OCS now. Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.